The great hall of the Vorthak Empire stretched out like a metal canyon. Commander Hyunwoo stood with his small human team at the center of the vast space. Above them, thousands of alien beings looked down from floating platforms. Their eyes glowed with different colors, and their bodies came in shapes that still surprised Hyunwoo even after 3 years of diplomatic work. The Vorthak themselves sat on the highest platform. They looked almost like humans, but their skin was gray, and their eyes were completely black. They had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. Every species that had ever reached the stars had to bow to them or be destroyed. Hyunwoo felt sweat on his forehead. The message from Earth had been clear. Today, the Empire would make a decision about humanity's place in the galaxy. For 50 years, humans had been trying to join the galactic community. They had followed every rule, paid every tax, and tried to prove they belonged among the stars. "The High Council will now speak," announced a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Emperor Vaktor stood slowly. His black robes moved around him like liquid shadow. When he spoke, his voice carried across the hall without any technology. The Vorthak had evolved beyond the need for such simple things. "We have watched the species called humans for many cycles," Vaktor said. "We have seen their wars, their violence, their endless hunger for conflict. They spread across their star system like a disease, fighting each other even as they reach for the stars." Hyunwoo wanted to speak, to defend his people, but the rules were clear. Humans could only listen today. "Other species learned peace before they reached the stars," the Emperor continued. "The Kalari meditate for decades before making any important decision. The Zephyrians have not known war for 1,000 years. The Morvax solve their problems through logic and reason." The Emperor's black eyes fixed on Hyunwoo. "But humans bring violence wherever they go. Your own history shows this. Even now, as you stand in this holy place, your people fight wars on 17 different worlds." It was true, and Hyunwoo knew it. Humanity had expanded fast, maybe too fast. Some colonies wanted independence. Others fought over resources. Pirates attacked shipping lanes. But this was growth, Hyunwoo thought. This was how a young species learned. "The Council has made its decision," Emperor Vaktor announced. "Humanity will be quarantined." The word hit Hyunwoo like a physical blow. Around the hall, alien voices rose in what sounded like approval. "All human space will be marked as forbidden," the Emperor continued. "No ship may enter or leave. No communication may pass through. No trade will be allowed. Humanity will remain isolated until they learn to abandon their violent nature." Hyunwoo found his voice. "Your Imperial Majesty, please, we can change, we can learn. Give us time to prove ourselves as part of the galactic community." Emperor Vaktor looked at him with something that might have been pity. "You have had time, human, 50 years of time. In that time, your people have started 12 new wars. You have refused to accept our guidance. You insist on governing yourselves in your primitive way. We govern ourselves because we believe in freedom," Hyunwoo said, knowing he was probably making things worse. "Freedom." The Emperor repeated the word like it tasted bad. "Freedom to kill. Freedom to destroy. Freedom to spread chaos across the stars. This is not freedom, human. This is madness." Another Vorthak stood up. This one was older, with scars across his gray face. "I am War Master Kolvan. I have studied your species carefully. You are good fighters, I will give you that. But you fight without honor, without purpose. You use weapons that we banned long ago. You show no mercy to your enemies." Hyunwoo thought about the last war report he had read. Human Marines had saved a Vorthak colony from pirates, losing 30 soldiers in the process. But apparently, that did not matter. "The quarantine will work like this," War Master Kolvan explained. "We will place sensor nets around all human space. Any ship that tries to leave will be destroyed. Any ship that tries to enter will be destroyed. You will have your precious freedom, but you will have it alone." "What if we change?" asked Dr. Somin. the only woman in the human group. What if we prove we can be peaceful? Emperor Vaktor smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then in 100 years we will check on you. If you have truly changed, if you have given up your violent ways, perhaps we will consider lifting the quarantine. 100 years. Hyunwoo did the math quickly. Everyone he knew would be dead. Their children would be dead. Maybe their grandchildren too. You offer us two choices, Hyunwoo said slowly. Submit to your re-education programs and give up everything that makes us human, or accept isolation for a century. Those are the only choices for a species like yours, the Emperor agreed. Hyunwoo activated his communication device. Across the galaxy, President Yoonji would be listening. She was an old woman now, but she had led humanity through its first steps into space. Her voice came through clearly. I have heard everything, President Yoonji said. Tell the Emperor that humanity chooses isolation. We will not give up who we are. We will not submit to alien re-education. If the Empire wants to put us in a cage, we will show them what caged animals can become. The hall fell silent. Even the Vorthak seemed surprised by the quick answer. Emperor Vaktor nodded slowly. So be it. The quarantine begins immediately. Return to your ships, humans. Return to your space. You will not be allowed to leave again. As the human team walked out of the Great Hall, Hyunwoo heard alien voices discussing the decision. Most seemed pleased. Some worried it was too harsh. A few thought it was not harsh enough. Admiral Kaite met them at their ship. He was an old soldier who had fought in the border wars. His face was hard as stone. Foolish, Kaite said as they walked up the ramp. The Empire thinks they know humans. They think isolation will break us. Maybe it will, said Captain Daeho. He was young, barely 30, and this was his first diplomatic mission. Maybe we are too violent. Maybe we do need to change. Kite stopped walking and turned to face the young captain. Boy, do you know what made humans the greatest fighters in the galaxy? Daeho shook his head. We adapt, Kite said. Every other species learned one way to live and stuck with it. Humans learned 100 ways. When the environment changed, we changed with it. When we faced new enemies, we became new fighters. When we reached the stars, we became something the galaxy had never seen before. They reached the bridge of their ship. Through the windows, they could see Vorthak warships taking positions around them, the escort that would make sure they left the capital and never returned. The Empire thinks they are protecting the galaxy from us, Admiral Kite continued. But they are really protecting us from the galaxy. They are giving us time to grow, to learn, to become something they cannot imagine. Dr. Somin sat down at her station and began reviewing the data she had collected. For 3 years, she had studied every alien species in the Empire. She had learned their strengths and weaknesses, their fears and desires. The Empire has been the same for 3,000 years, she said quietly. Same technology, same tactics, same way of thinking. They believe their way is the only way. And that will be their downfall, Admiral Kite said with certainty. The ship began to move, escorted by a dozen Vorthak destroyers. Behind them, the capital world grew smaller. Ahead lay the long journey back to human space, and then the beginning of their isolation. Captain Daeho studied the Vorthak ships around them. They were beautiful in their way, but they looked exactly like the ships his grandfather had seen 50 years ago. No changes, no improvements, just the same designs passed down through generations. Admiral, Daeho said slowly, what if the Empire is making a mistake? They are making the biggest mistake in galactic history, Kite replied. They think they are putting humanity in prison, but prisons work both ways. They keep things in, but they also keep things out. And sometimes, what you keep out is more dangerous than what you keep in. 3 weeks later, they reached the edge of human space. Already, the Empire had built sensor stations and patrol bases. Energy barriers stretched between the stars like invisible walls. No human ship would pass through them and survive. Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the last human ship to enter the quarantine zone. Behind them, the galaxy continued its business without humanity. Ahead lay Earth and the 100 colonies that would now be completely alone. "What do we tell them?" asked Dr. So-min. "We tell them the truth," Hyunwoo said. "We tell them that the galaxy thinks we are too dangerous to be free. We tell them that we have been judged and found wanting." "And then?" asked Captain Daeho. "Admiral." Kaite smiled for the first time since the trial. "Then we show them what dangerous really looks like." The ship crossed the barrier and entered human space. Behind them, the sensor net activated. From now on, every human ship that tried to leave would be detected and destroyed. Every alien ship that tried to enter would face the same fate. The Vorthak Empire had just made humanity's choice simple: adapt or die, change or perish, find a new way to live, or face extinction in isolation. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. As their ship headed for Earth, Admiral Kite called a meeting. The entire crew gathered in the main conference room. These were good people, Hyunwoo thought. Diplomats, soldiers, scientists. The best humanity had to offer. 50 years had passed since the quarantine began. On the Imperial capital world, War Master Kolvan stood before a massive display showing the human quarantine zone. The barriers still glowed with power, keeping the dangerous humans locked away from civilized space. "Any word from the human zone?" asked his aide, a young Vorthak named Telmor. "Nothing for decades," Kolvan replied. "The sensors show some activity near their home world, but it gets weaker every year. They are probably dying out." Telmor nodded. It made sense. Cut off from galactic trade, without access to advanced technology or resources, the violent humans would eventually destroy themselves. It was sad but necessary. Neither of them knew that deep in human space, Engineer Jae-sung was putting the finishing touches on humanity's greatest achievement. In a hidden facility built inside an asteroid, he watched as the first prototype stealth ship powered up its engines. "All systems showing green," reported his assistant, a woman named Yuna. "The quantum phase generator is stable. Sensors are not picking up anything." Jae-sung smiled. 50 years of isolation had taught humanity many things. The most important lesson was that if you could not go through something, you had to go around it. Or in this case, you had to learn to exist in the spaces between. The ship in front of them looked like no human vessel ever built. Its hull seemed to bend light around it, making it hard to look at directly. More importantly, it existed in a state that made it invisible to every sensor the Empire used. "Send word to General Young-ho," Jae-sung said. "Project Shadow is ready for testing." 3 star systems away, General Young-ho received the message while reviewing reports from humanity's secret expansion. The Empire thought humans were trapped on their original worlds. They had no idea that human ships had been slipping through their quarantine for 30 years. "How many colonies do we have now?" he asked his intelligence officer, Captain Tae-min. 47. "Confirmed settlements," Tae-min replied. "All in systems the Empire has never explored. We have been very careful to avoid their patrol routes." Young-ho nodded. The key to human survival had been thinking like smugglers instead of conquerors. Instead of fighting the quarantine directly, they had found ways around it. Hidden routes through dead systems, paths that avoided Imperial sensors, ways to travel that the Empire had never imagined. "What about resources?" Young-ho asked. "Better than expected," Tae-min said. "The new colonies are rich in materials we need, and without Empire trade restrictions, we have been free to develop our own technologies." This was the part that made Young-ho most proud. Cut off from Imperial technology, humans had been forced to innovate. They had developed new ways to build ships, new weapons, new tools, things the Empire had never seen because they had never needed to create them. On a research station hidden in a nebula, scientist Mi Young made a discovery that would change everything. She had been studying the Empire's faster-than-light travel for decades, trying to understand how it worked. Now, she thought she had found something better. The Empire uses fixed hyperspace lanes, she explained to her team. Like roads through space, they can only travel where the roads exist, but what if we could travel anywhere? Her assistant, Dr. Sung Ho, looked confused. Hyperspace does not work that way. You need stable lanes or the ship gets lost. That is what the Empire believes, Mi Young said. But they have never tried to create new lanes. They just use the ones that already exist. She activated a holographic display showing her new design. This drive does not use the existing lanes. It creates temporary ones, small, short-lived, but completely undetectable. The implications were huge. If humans could travel anywhere in space without using the Empire's hyperspace network, they could go places no Imperial ship could follow. They could appear anywhere without warning. Back on Earth, Admiral Kite had lived to see his predictions come true. Now 90 years old, he walked slowly through the human fleet's new command center. The ships outside looked nothing like the vessels they had built 50 years ago. "Show me the latest intelligence reports," he told his aide, Commander Hyejin. Hyejin activated the holographic display. Images appeared showing Imperial worlds, fleet movements, and political situations. Information that should have been impossible for isolated humans to obtain. "Our reconnaissance ships have mapped most of the Empire's core systems," Hyejin reported. "We know their patrol schedules, their base locations, and their fleet strengths." "What about their weaknesses?" Kite asked. "Growing every year," Hyejin said with satisfaction. "They have not fought a real war in centuries. Their ships are old. Their tactics are predictable. Most importantly, they have become lazy." Kite smiled. This was exactly what he had hoped would happen. The Empire had grown comfortable in their power. They assumed their superiority was permanent. They had stopped trying to improve because they believed they were already perfect. Meanwhile, humans had spent 50 years learning to survive. Every day had been a test. Every problem had required a new solution. They had been forced to become better, stronger, smarter. Not by choice, but by necessity. "What about their subject species?" Kite asked. "Growing restless," Hyejin replied. "The Kalari are demanding more autonomy. The Zephyrians want to leave the Empire entirely. The Morvac are forming secret societies. The Empire's perfect order is starting to crack." This was the most interesting development. The Empire ruled through fear and overwhelming force. But they had been peaceful for so long that their subjects were starting to forget why they were afraid. New generations were asking why they had to obey alien masters. In a secret facility on the edge of human space, Captain Taemin prepared for humanity's most dangerous mission yet. His ship was one of the new stealth vessels, invisible to Imperial sensors and capable of traveling through unexplored space. "Mission parameters are simple," he told his crew. "We will scout the Empire's border systems, map their defenses, identify targets, but most importantly, we will make contact." "Contact with who?" asked his pilot, Lieutenant Bora. "The Empire's enemies," Taemin replied. "Every great power has rivals. We are going to find them." The ship launched from its hidden base and slipped through space like a ghost. Imperial sensors detected nothing. Their patrol ships saw nothing. For all they knew, the human zone was still empty and silent. But Taemin's ship was not alone. Across human space, dozens of similar vessels were beginning similar missions. After 50 years of hiding, humanity was ready to learn what lay beyond their cage. The first contact came 3 months later. Taemin's ship encountered a fleet of vessels belonging to the Kozak Federation, the Empire's greatest enemy. The Kozak had been fighting the Vorthak for 1,000 years, winning some battles, but always losing the war. "Unknown vessel," came the transmission. "Identify yourself or be destroyed." Taemin opened a communication channel. "This is Captain Taemin of the Terran Commonwealth. We wish to talk." There was a long pause. "Terran? We have never heard of your species. Where do you come from?" "From inside the Empire's quarantine zone," Taemin replied. "We are the humans they locked away 50 years ago." Another pause. Longer, this time. "That is impossible. No ship can pass through the quarantine barriers." "We did not pass through them," Taemin said. "We went around them." The meeting that followed changed everything. The Kozak leader, Admiral Vorkesh, was amazed by human technology. Their stealth systems were beyond anything his people had imagined. Their weapons were unlike anything in the galaxy. "How did you develop these things?" Vorkesh asked. "Necessity," Taemin replied. "When you are trapped and alone, you either adapt or die. We chose to adapt. And now you want to help us fight the Empire?" "Not yet," Taemin said carefully. "First we want to learn. We want to understand the galaxy beyond our cage. Then we will decide how to use what we have learned." Similar contacts were made across the galaxy. The Orion Alliance fighting for independence in the Outer Rim, the Free Worlds Coalition trying to establish trade routes outside Imperial control, the Shadow Clans, pirates and rebels who had never submitted to Imperial rule. All of them were amazed by human technology. All of them wanted to know how isolated humans had become so advanced. None of them suspected the truth. That isolation had been humanity's greatest advantage. Back on Earth, President Nari reviewed the reports from the reconnaissance missions. She was the third president since the quarantine began, elected by colonies the Empire did not know existed. "How much longer before we are ready?" she asked General Young-ho. "Soon," Young-ho replied. "Our fleet grows stronger every month. Our technology advances every year. Our knowledge of the Empire increases every day. And their knowledge of us? Still zero," Young-ho said with satisfaction. "They believe we are either extinct or helpless. They have no idea what we have become." President Nari looked out the window at the bustling spaceport below. Ships came and went constantly, carrying goods between the hidden human colonies. The population had tripled since the quarantine began. Technology had advanced by centuries. "The Empire made a mistake," she said quietly. "The biggest mistake in galactic history," Young-ho agreed. "They gave us time to grow, time to learn, time to become something they could never expect. And now, we wait for the right moment," Young-ho said. "The Empire is showing cracks there." Admiral Juwon stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the battle reports come in from across the Empire. Red markers showed rebel attacks, missing convoys, and communication blackouts. In 50 years of service, he had never seen anything like it. "How many incidents this month?" he asked his intelligence officer, Commander Dalsu. 47 confirmed attacks," Dalsu replied, his voice tired. "Twice as many as last month. The rebels are getting bolder." Juwon frowned. The rebels had always been a problem, but never like this. Now they struck with precision and disappeared without a trace. They had weapons that could pierce Imperial shields, ships that moved faster than anything in the Imperial fleet. "Any pattern to the attacks?" he asked. "They seem to target our supply routes most often," Dalsu said, "but they also hit communication stations, sensor arrays, and isolated bases, always places where we are weakest." This was what worried Juwon most. The rebels were fighting smart. Too smart. For centuries, rebel groups had been brave but stupid. They attacked fortified positions and got themselves killed. These new rebels avoided strong targets and hit weak ones. "Sir," called out his sensor operator, Lieutenant Hae-young, "we are receiving a priority message from the Kozak front." Juwon accepted the transmission. Admiral Kektar's face appeared on the screen and he looked worried. "Juwon, we have a problem," Kektar said without greeting. "The Kozak have new weapons, new ships, new tactics. They hit our supply base at Regulus yesterday and destroyed the entire garrison." "How many ships did they lose?" Juwon asked. "None," Kektar replied. "They appeared from nowhere, struck fast, and disappeared. Our sensors detected nothing until they opened fire." Juwon felt a cold feeling in his stomach. The Kozak Federation had been fighting the Empire for 1,000 years. They were brave and determined, but they had never been this effective. "Send me all the data," Juwon ordered. "I want to see everything." The transmission ended and Juwon studied the reports from across the Empire. Similar stories came from every front. The Orion Alliance was using new stealth technology. The Free Worlds Coalition had weapons that bypassed Imperial shields. Pirates in the Outer Rim struck with coordination that suggested outside help. "Commander Dalsu," Juwon said slowly. "What if all these incidents are connected? Connected how, sir? What if someone is helping our enemies? Someone with technology we do not understand? Dalsu looked skeptical. Who could that be? We have mapped every star system in the galaxy. We know every spacefaring species. None of them have technology superior to ours. Ju Wan was not so sure. He had been studying the attack patterns for months, and they all showed the same characteristics. Precise intelligence, advanced technology, perfect timing. It was as if someone had been watching the Empire for years, learning their weaknesses. On a hidden space station in the Kozak territory, Ambassador Hyejin met with resistance leaders from across the galaxy. She wore the uniform of a Kozak diplomat, but her real identity was known only to a few trusted allies. The Empire is starting to notice the pattern, she told the assembled group. They know someone is helping you, but they do not know who. Commander, Vorkesh of the Kozak Federation leaned forward. How much longer can we keep this secret? Long enough, Hyejin replied. The Empire suspects, but they cannot prove anything. Their arrogance blinds them to the truth. Around the table sat representatives of every major resistance group in the galaxy. The Orion Alliance leader, General Texol. The Free World's Coalition Admiral, Zekmar. Even representatives from the Shadow clans, pirates who had never cooperated with anyone before. The weapons you have given us are beyond anything we imagine, said General Texol. Our raids are 10 times more effective, but we need more ships. Ships take time to build, Hyejin replied. But we can offer you something better. Training, tactics, intelligence about Imperial fleet movements. This was the genius of the human plan. Instead of revealing themselves by attacking directly, they were letting the Empire's existing enemies do the fighting. They provided weapons, intelligence, and support, but always from the shadows. When will your people reveal themselves? Asked Admiral Zekmar. When the time is right, Hyejin said. The Empire must be weakened first, their fleet scattered, their allies doubting. Only then will humanity strike. Meanwhile, Commander Sungmin led a covert team deep into Imperial space. Their ship was invisible to sensors, but that did not make the mission safe. They were heading for the Empire's most secure facility, the Central Intelligence Archive. Remember, Sungmin told his team as they approached the station, we are not here to fight. We are here to learn, get the data, and get out. The team consisted of 6 specialists, each trained for this exact mission. They would infiltrate the station, copy the Imperial database, and escape without anyone knowing they had been there. The infiltration went perfectly. The team slipped past security systems that had never been bypassed. They copied files that contained the Empire's deepest secrets, fleet positions, supply routes, defensive plans, even personal communications between Imperial leaders. But as they prepared to leave, something went wrong. A routine security patrol detected an anomaly. Alarms began to sound. Emergency barriers activated. We are trapped, reported the team's technical specialist, Officer Wanbin. Sungmin made a quick decision. Split up, take different routes. If anyone gets caught, you know nothing about the others. The team scattered through the station, but Imperial security was closing in fast. One by one, Sungmin's people were captured or killed. Only he and Wanbin made it back to their ship. Did we get the data? Wanbin asked as they fled. Most of it, Sungmin replied. But they know someone was there. This will raise questions. He was right. The security breach at the Central Intelligence Archive sent shockwaves through the Imperial Command. Someone had penetrated their most secure facility and stolen classified information. Someone with technology that could bypass their best defenses. Emperor Vaktor called an emergency session of the High Council. The Great Hall filled with worried officials and military leaders. The same hall where humanity had been sentenced to quarantine 60 years ago. Explain to me how this happened, the Emperor demanded. War Master Kolvan, now ancient but still in command, studied the security reports. Unknown infiltrators penetrated the archive using stealth technology we cannot detect. They accessed our most classified files. Who could do such a thing? Asked Council Leader Morvel. The Kozak Federation has been showing unusual capabilities recently, suggested Admiral Telmore. Perhaps they have developed new technology. Kolvan shook his head. The Kozak are good fighters, but they are not inventors. Someone else is behind this. Who? The Emperor asked. I do not know, Kolvan admitted. But whoever they are, they have been studying us for a long time. They know our weaknesses too well. In the back of the hall, Intelligence Officer Bo-Ram listened to the discussion with growing unease. She had been investigating the recent attacks for months, and she had found something that troubled her deeply. The attack patterns, the technology, the tactics. They all reminded her of something she had read in the historical archives. Reports from the human quarantine zone, decades old but still classified. After the session ended, Bo-Ram returned to her office and pulled up the old files. Most of the records from the quarantine zone were routine. Sensor readings showing decreasing activity, patrol reports of empty space, the slow death of an isolated species. But buried in the files were anomalies. Sensor ghosts that appeared and disappeared, brief energy signatures that made no sense, reports that had been dismissed as equipment malfunctions. Now, looking at them with fresh eyes, Bo-Ram saw a different pattern. The anomalies had been increasing over the years, not decreasing. The signatures matched no known technology, but they were consistent, and they all came from the areas closest to the quarantine zone. Impossible, she whispered to herself. But the data did not lie. Bo-Ram began cross-referencing the old reports with recent attack data. The correlation was unmistakable. Every major rebel success had happened near the quarantine zone. Every new weapon or tactic had first appeared in that region. She compiled her findings into a report and requested a meeting with Admiral Juwan. He was known as a man who listened to evidence, even when it challenged accepted wisdom. You are suggesting that the humans are behind these attacks? Juwan asked after reading her report. I am suggesting it is possible, Bo-Ram replied carefully. The evidence points in that direction. But the humans were quarantined 60 years ago. They have no ships capable of leaving their space. Our sensors would detect any attempt to break through the barriers. What if they found a way around the barriers? Bo-Ram asked. What if they developed technology we do not understand? Juwan was quiet for a long time, studying the data. Finally, he spoke. This is speculation. Interesting speculation, but still speculation. We need proof. How do we get proof? Bo-Ram asked. We set a trap, Juwan said. If the humans are really behind these attacks, they must be gathering intelligence somehow. We give them information they cannot resist, and we watch to see who takes it. The trap was elaborate. False information about a major fleet movement was leaked through multiple channels. The data suggested that a large Imperial convoy would be. Emperor Vaktor stood before the largest holographic display ever built, showing the entire Vorthak Empire in glowing detail. Red markers indicated rebel activity across hundreds of star systems. The empire that had ruled the galaxy for 3 millennia was burning. How many fleets do we have available? He asked General Kyung-Soo, his new military commander. 800 battle groups, Kyung-Soo replied. The largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. The Emperor nodded grimly. The situation called for overwhelming force. The rebels had grown too bold, striking Imperial worlds with weapons that seemed impossible. Entire colonies had declared independence. Trade routes were completely disrupted. Operation Cleansing Fire will restore order, the Emperor declared. We will crush every rebel world simultaneously. No quarter will be given, no mercy will be shown. What the Emperor did not know was that in the hidden depths of human space, President Nari was watching the Imperial fleet movements with deep satisfaction. Every ship the Empire moved toward rebel territory was one ship fewer defending their core worlds. They are taking the bait perfectly, reported Fleet Admiral Chan Wu. Imperial forces are being pulled away from their main defensive positions. How long before our fleets are in position? President Nari asked. 12 hours, Chan Wu replied. All attack groups are approaching their targets. The Empire will not see us coming. Around Earth and the hidden human colonies, the greatest fleet in human history prepared for battle. 500 ships that existed in the spaces between normal reality. Weapons that could tear apart Imperial shields like paper. Soldiers trained in tactics the Empire had never imagined. The plan was simple and devastating. While the Empire attacked, rebel worlds with overwhelming force, humanity would strike at the Empire's heart. Supply bases, communication centers, and fleet headquarters would be destroyed simultaneously across 1,000 star systems. On the Imperial flagship, General Kyung-Soo reviewed the battle plans one final time. Operation Cleansing Fire would deploy Imperial fleets to every rebel system at once. The rebels would face the full might of the Empire and be crushed. "Begin the operation," he ordered. Across the galaxy, Imperial fleets moved to attack rebel positions. The largest military campaign in galactic history was beginning. The Empire was confident that their overwhelming numbers would end the rebellion once and for all. They had no idea they were walking into a trap that had been 60 years in the making. The first human attack came at the Regulus supply base, a massive facility that fed resources to Imperial fleets across 3 sectors. Admiral Won-ho led the assault with 12 stealth ships that appeared from nowhere. "All targets locked," reported his weapons officer, Commander In-soo. "Ready to fire." "Fire," Won-ho ordered. The base's shields were designed to stop conventional weapons. They offered no protection against human quantum disruptors that simply ignored normal matter. The facility exploded in a chain reaction that lit up the entire star system. "Base destroyed," In-soo reported. "No survivors detected." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Human fleets struck at Imperial facilities with surgical precision. Communication centers went dark. Supply depots exploded. Fleet headquarters vanished in balls of fire. On the Imperial capital world, War Master Kolvan watched the reports come in with growing horror. Red markers appeared on the strategic display at an impossible rate. Imperial bases were being destroyed faster than the computer could update the map. "How many attacks?" he asked his aide. "Over 300 confirmed," came the reply. "More reports coming in every minute." "Who is responsible for this?" Kolvan demanded. Before anyone could answer, the display showed something that made Kolvan's blood run cold. Ships were appearing throughout Imperial space, hundreds of them. Ships that looked almost familiar but carried weapons unlike anything in the galaxy. "Get me Admiral Juwan," Kolvan ordered. He was right. We need to know who we are fighting. But Admiral Juwan was dead, killed in the first wave of attacks when human forces destroyed the Outer Rim Command Center. The man who had tried to warn the Empire about the human threat was gone. On Earth, President Nari watched the battle reports with grim satisfaction. Phase 1 of the human counterattack was proceeding perfectly. Imperial forces were scattered across the galaxy, trying to suppress rebellions. Their core systems were defended only by patrol ships and orbital stations. "Begin Phase 2, she ordered. Fleet Admiral Chan Wu activated the second wave of attacks. Human battle groups that had been hiding in dark space for months suddenly appeared around major Imperial worlds. They struck at military targets with devastating precision. The Imperial Third Fleet was destroyed while refueling at Antares Station. The Fifth Fleet vanished when human weapons collapsed the artificial wormhole they were using for travel. The Seventh Fleet fought bravely for 6 hours before being overwhelmed by enemies they could barely see. General Kyung-Soo tried desperately to coordinate a defense, but his forces were scattered across the galaxy. Every time he gave an order, the communication network failed. Every time he tried to recall a fleet, human attacks cut their supply lines. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we have lost contact with Admiral Telmore's fleet. Last report showed them under attack by unknown forces." "Unknown forces?" Kyung-Soo asked. "The attackers are using stealth technology. Our sensors cannot get clear readings." Kyung-Soo studied the tactical display and felt a terrible understanding begin to dawn. The attack patterns were too coordinated. The technology was too advanced. The timing was too perfect. "Get me a secure channel to the Emperor," he ordered. Emperor Vaktor appeared on the screen, his black robes disheveled, his face showing strain. Behind him, the Imperial Palace was clearly in chaos. "Report," the Emperor demanded. Your Majesty, we are under attack by an unknown force, Kyung-Su said. They have superior technology and detailed knowledge of our operations. I believe we are facing the humans. The Emperor's face went pale. Impossible. The humans are quarantined. They cannot leave their space. The quarantine barriers are still in place, Kyung-Su admitted, but somehow they have gotten around them. The attack patterns match what Admiral Ju-Wan predicted. For the first time in his long life, Emperor Vaktor felt real fear. If the humans had somehow escaped their cage and developed superior technology, the Empire was in terrible danger. Recall all fleets, he ordered. Abandon the rebel campaigns. We must defend the core worlds. But it was too late. Human forces had anticipated this response. As Imperial fleets tried to return home, they found their routes blocked by rebel forces armed with human weapons. Ships that tried to use the main hyperspace lanes were ambushed by human stealth vessels. The Empire's greatest strength, their vast size, had become their greatest weakness. Their forces were spread too thin to defend everything at once. Commander Sung-min led the attack on the Vorthak homeworld's orbital defenses. His force consisted of 50 human ships, invisible to Imperial sensors until they opened fire. Target the defense platforms first, he ordered. We want to disable their ability to fight back, not destroy the planet. This was important. Humanity was not interested in genocide. They wanted to defeat the Empire, not become the same kind of monsters the Empire had been. The orbital defenses of the Imperial capital were the strongest in the galaxy. Massive platforms armed with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. But they were designed to fight conventional enemies using conventional tactics. Human ships phased through their shields and fired from point-blank range. Quantum disruptors collapsed the platform's power cores. In 30 minutes, the defenses that had protected the Imperial capital for 1,000 years were gone. Send the message, Sung-min ordered. On the surface of the Vorthak homeworld, Emperor Vaktor received a transmission from the mysterious attackers. A human face appeared on his screen, the first human he had seen in 60 years. I am Fleet. Admiral Chan Wu of the Terran Commonwealth, the human said. I believe you remember my people. The Emperor stared at the face on the screen. The human looked older than any from the old records, but there was no mistaking the species. The same features, the same defiant expression, the same dangerous intelligence in the eyes. You were quarantined, the Emperor said weakly. You tried to quarantine us, Chan Wu corrected, but cages work both ways. You kept us in, but you also kept yourselves out. For 60 years, we grew and learned and became something you never imagined. What do you want? The Emperor asked. The same thing you wanted 60 years ago, Chan Wu replied. We want to end this conflict. We offer you the same choice you offered us. Submit to our judgment or face the consequences. The transmission ended, leaving the Emperor staring at a blank screen. Around him, the Imperial Palace shook as human weapons destroyed the last of the orbital defenses. On rebel worlds across the galaxy, human ships appeared alongside local forces. The Kozak Federation found themselves fighting beside invisible allies. The Orion Alliance received support from ships that seemed to appear from nowhere. For the first time in 1,000 years, Imperial forces were retreating. The empire that had ruled the galaxy through fear and overwhelming force was being systematically dismantled by an enemy they had created through their own arrogance. War Master Kolvan made one last desper. Emperor Korthak stood in the ruins of what had once been the most powerful throne room in the galaxy. He was the third emperor to rule since the human quarantine began, and he would be the last. Around him, broken glass and twisted metal showed, where human weapons had torn through defenses that had protected his ancestors for millennia. The war had lasted only 6 days. 6 days to destroy an empire that had ruled for 3,000 years. Through the shattered windows he could see human ships in orbit around the Vorthak homeworld. They hung in space like dark angels, beautiful and terrible. Their weapons were silent now, but everyone knew they could reduce the planet to ash in minutes. Your Imperial Majesty, his aide whispered. The human delegation has arrived. Korthak straightened his robes and tried to look like an emperor, instead of a defeated old man. The great doors opened, and the humans walked in. The leader was an elderly man who moved with the careful steps of someone very old but still strong. Korthak recognized him from intelligence files that were 60 years out of date. Admiral Hyunwoo, the same human who had witnessed the original quarantine decree. "Your Imperial Majesty," Hyunwoo said with a slight bow. "I am Admiral Hyunwoo, of the Terran Commonwealth. We have come to discuss terms." Korthak looked at the human who had lived to see his people's ultimate victory. "You have lived a long time to see this day." "Too long," Hyunwoo replied sadly. "I hoped your people would learn wisdom before it came to this." Behind Hyunwoo stood other humans. General In-ho, who had led the ground assault on 17 Imperial worlds. Diplomat Ye-jin, who had spent decades secretly negotiating with rebel groups. Commander Subin, whose fleet had destroyed the Imperial Navy's proudest ships. "What are your terms?" Korthak asked. Hyunwoo activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. Most of it was no longer colored Imperial blue. Green marked human-controlled space. Yellow showed rebel territories. Red indicated systems still fighting. "Unconditional surrender," Hyunwoo said simply. "All Imperial fleets will stand down. All occupied worlds will be freed. All Imperial leaders will submit to judgment by the new Galactic Council." "And if we refuse?" Korthak asked, though he already knew the answer. "Then this planet becomes a monument to Imperial pride," General In-ho said coldly. "We have weapons that can crack worlds. We have used them before when necessary." It was true. 3 Imperial fortress worlds had already been destroyed when their garrisons refused to surrender. Entire populations had been evacuated first, but the message was clear. Humanity would not be stopped by Imperial stubbornness. "You offer us the same choice you offered us 60 years ago," Korthak said bitterly. "Submit or be destroyed." "No," Hyunwoo corrected. "We offer you a better choice. Join us in building something new or step aside and let others do it. We do not want to rule the galaxy. We want to free it." This was the difference that Korthak was beginning to understand. The Empire had ruled through fear and force. These humans seemed genuinely interested in creating something better. "What happens to my people?" he asked. "The same thing that happens to every other species," Diplomat Ye-jin replied. "They become citizens of the new Commonwealth. Equal citizens, with equal rights and equal responsibilities. Even after everything we have done, especially because of what you have done," Hyunwoo said. "You have shown the galaxy what happens when one species believes it is superior to all others. That lesson must not be forgotten." Korthak walked to the broken window and looked out at his capital city. Vorthak civilians moved through the streets under the protection of human soldiers. The humans could have bombed the city flat, but instead, they had sent troops to maintain order and protect the population. "Why do you show us mercy?" he asked. "We would not have been so kind to you." "We know," General In-ho said. "We studied your history carefully. We know about the species you exterminated, the worlds you burned, the civilizations you erased because they would not bow to your will. And yet you spare us?" "Because we are not you," Hyunwoo said simply. "We fight when we must, but we do not kill when we do not have to. The goal is to build a better galaxy, not to become the same monsters we defeated." A communication device chirped, and Commander Subin answered it. "Admiral, we are receiving surrender messages from the remaining Imperial fleets. War Master Kolvan has ordered all forces to stand down." "Kolvan lives?" Korthak asked with surprise. "He is our prisoner," Subin replied. "He fought bravely at the Battle of Antares. When his fleet was defeated, he surrendered rather than see more of his people die." This was another surprise. Korthak had expected the humans to execute Imperial leaders. Instead, they seemed more interested in understanding than revenge. "Will you accept our surrender?" Korthak asked. "We will accept your commitment to peace," Hyunwoo replied. "The Commonwealth does not want subjects. We want partners." The formal surrender ceremony took place on the neutral world of Harmony Station, a trading post that had somehow remained independent throughout the war. Representatives from every species in the galaxy gathered to witness the end of the Vorthak Empire. Emperor Korthak signed the treaty that dissolved his empire. In its place would rise the Terran Commonwealth, a federation of free worlds governed by elected representatives rather than hereditary rulers. "This is not the end," he said as he set down the signing stylus. "This is the beginning of something new." "Yes," agreed President Nari, who had flown from Earth to witness the ceremony. "Something better than what came before." The crowd in the Great Hall was a mix of species that had never sat together as equals. Kozak warriors stood beside Vorthak nobles. Orion traders talked with Zephyrian philosophers. For the first time in galactic history, no one species ruled over the others. Fleet Admiral Chan Wu took the stage to address the assembly. 60 years ago, humanity was judged unfit to join galactic civilization. We were locked away because we were considered too dangerous, too violent, too unpredictable. The hall was completely silent. Perhaps that judgment was correct, Chan Wu continued. Perhaps we were all of those things, but isolation taught us something important. It taught us that strength without wisdom is meaningless. Power without justice is corruption. Victory without mercy is just another form of defeat. He paused and looked around the hall at the faces of 100 different species. The empire fell not because humanity was stronger, but because the empire forgot the most important lesson in the galaxy. No one species is superior to any other. No one world has the right to rule all others. No one government should decide the fate of billions without their consent. Applause filled the hall, but Chan Wu was not finished. The Commonwealth we build today will not be perfect. There will be mistakes, conflicts, and hard choices. But it will be built on the foundation that all thinking beings deserve freedom, dignity, and the chance to determine their own destiny. Later, as the delegates dispersed to carry news of the new order to their homeworlds, Admiral Hyun-woo walked, alone through the memorial garden on Harmony Station. The garden honored all the species that had been lost during the Empire's long reign. He stopped at a small plaque that read, "To the humans who died in isolation, believing they were forgotten. You were not forgotten. Your sacrifice made this day possible." "Regrets?" asked a voice behind him. Hyun-woo turned to see Emperor Korthak approaching slowly. The former ruler looked older than his years, burdened by the weight of his empire's crimes. "Many," Hyun-woo replied. "I regret that it took so long. I regret that so many had to die. I regret that your people learned humility only through defeat. And I regret that my ancestors were too proud to see the truth," Korthak said. "We could have had this peace 60 years ago if we had chosen wisdom over pride." They stood together, in silence, looking at the memorial. Two old men who had lived through the end of one age and the beginning of another. "What will you do now?" Hyun-woo asked. "Help," Korthak said simply. "Help build the Commonwealth. Help my people learn to live as equals instead of masters. Help ensure that no species ever again believes it has the right to cage another. And if they do not listen, then they will learn the same lesson we learned," Korthak said grimly. "Pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall." On Earth, in the museum that had been built to commemorate the quarantine years, a new exhibit was being installed. It showed the rise and fall of the Vorthak Empire in stark detail. The wars, the conquests, the oppression, and finally the collapse. But the centerpiece of the exhibit was not about the empire at all. It was a simple display showing a human child born during the quarantine years. She was now an old woman, but she had lived to see her species become the liberators of the galaxy. The inscription beneath her picture read, "Sometimes the most dangerous animal is not the one that roars the loudest, but the one that adapts the fastest." In the depths of space, the quarantine barriers that had once imprisoned humanity were being dismantled. The energy that had kept humans caged for 60 years was being converted into power for the new Commonwealth's communication network. The cage was gone. The prison was destroyed. And from its ashes had risen something the galaxy had never seen before. A civilization based on cooperation instead of conquest. Justice instead of power. Freedom instead of fear. The Vorthak Empire had ruled through